Rainforests Forest Reserve is truly one of the hidden treasures of Borneo. Now, unlike the Kinabatangan River or Danum Valley, say, this place is almost undiscovered by tourists. Now, over the next few days, we're going to be discovering just what makes this place so special.
The island of Borneo is found in the middle of Southeast Asia and is shared between Brunei, Indonesia and Malaysia. Some of the oldest rainforests in the world grow on this island, which has given rise to truly remarkable levels of biodiversity and species that are only found here. Rainforests Forest Reserve is located in northeastern Borneo, in the Malaysian state of Sabah, holding 55,000 hectares of forest. 7% of it is reserved for conservation, and the other 93% is a part of Southeast Asia's first, longest running, and arguably most successful attempt at what is known as reduced impact logging. Reduced impact logging is all about the careful planning and management of forests, trying to balance the needs of people with the needs of the forest and of the wildlife that calls it home, especially when compared to the impact of regular logging practices. Under reduced impact logging, trees that make up the forest canopy, nesting trees, and those that are used by wildlife to move through areas, these are supposed to be left alone. One nice, easy little way for us to test how the wildlife of Rainforests is coping with reduced impact logging is to head out and see how abundant and diverse the life in these forests truly is. We're hoping that with the reduced impact, we should see plenty of animal life, as well as a variety of species, and hopefully even some of the rarer ones.
So special. Now, we're told that this is one of the best spots in potentially the whole of Southeast Asia to find animals like the clouded leopard, the otter civet, and a whole host of other wildlife. So if we get really lucky, this could be incredibly exciting. But this is wildlife we're talking about. So the chances of actually finding them are very, very slim, as these are highly enigmatic species that very, very few people see in their lifetime. We'll be heading out in the back of a truck along an old logging road that dissects the forest. And we'll be going morning, afternoon and night to find as much wildlife that calls the Rainforests home. Let's get out there and check it out.
Sitting in the four-wheel drive allows us to cover more ground and travel much deeper into the heart of the forest than we would otherwise be able to do. By doing so, hopefully, we'll increase our chances of seeing a greater variety of wildlife, particularly as we get deeper into the forest and away from the reserve's entrance. The old logging roads crisscross the forest here, remnants of when Rainforests was first logged 70 years ago. Now these trails are used for ecotourism to bring in more money as the forest has begun to flourish again.
Now these roads are great for finding wildlife. You've got the forest on either side, and this road cuts straight through the middle of the forest. We're out here looking for, in particular, some of the primates of this area. We're looking for things like orangutans, gibbons, langurs, all sorts of things. Lots of bugs as well. But we've been quite lucky so far. We finally found a couple of snakes basking on the middle of the road. One of them a grey-tailed racer, gorgeous little snake. And another one that I don't know the species of, but he was just sitting there like this, just watching, and then a serpent eagle swooped over the top and he raced off into the underbrush. So fast. It was unfortunate though, as it meant I didn't get to get a shot, or to sort of get a good look at him, but I'll take what I can get, and seeing snakes is always a good day. So far though, we haven't had a whole amount of luck finding the primates. They're pretty skittish, which is a good sign. In other areas of Peninsular Malaysia and of Borneo, the primates aren't as afraid of humans, which is really not good because people can catch them a lot easier, or they might end up in the pet trade, which would be awful. But here, they're truly wild. This area, Rainforests, the forests here are unlike anything I've experienced so far in Malaysia. The forests are they're just so special. I can't quite put it into words. There's a mysticism to them that really I've never experienced anywhere else. Hopefully we find some primates or some snakes or whatever else we might find pretty soon. I'm going to show you guys some of those. Maybe we might even find some elephants if we're really lucky. But who knows, just trying to keep an eye out for whatever we might find.
Luckily, we didn't have to wait for too long. This gorgeous monkey is the maroon langur. Named for their beautiful shaggy fur, these primates are only found here in Borneo and on one other tiny island off the coast. These langurs spend their entire lives in the trees, living in male-dominated groups of up to 13 monkeys. As we watched, we realised that there were babies amongst the group. It's hard to gauge how old they are from this distance, as this species can breed all year round, having a baby every 2 years. We suspect that these little cuties were probably less than a year old though, as langurs tend to be fully weaned after a year. While they were adventurous, they definitely weren't willing to stray too far from mum. So cute. The diet of the maroon langur consists mainly of young leaves, which provide very little energy. As a result, the langurs have evolved a surprising adaptation to allow themselves to obtain as many nutrients as possible from their food. Their stomachs have distinct similarities to those of some hooved mammals, like cows, as they have multiple chambers within their stomach to help them digest their food. This digestion process is known as rumination. These striking monkeys are forest specialists, but seem to be able to adapt to areas of regrowth fairly well. They became perhaps our most common sight as we drove through the rainforest of Duramakot. Finding this strong a population here was such a joy. We could have stayed watching these beautiful monkeys and their babies all day, but we were running out of time. The light was fading quickly, and the rainforest at night is a totally different world.
Tonight we're heading out deep into the forest in the middle of the night, because here in Duramakot there is a whole load of wildlife that you can find that in other parts of Malaysia, and in Borneo in particular, will be incredibly difficult to spot. Now we have to get really lucky to find them still, but due to the nature of the logging roads that run through this forest, you're presented with a very, very good opportunity to find stuff that you would find nowhere else. We're heading out hoping to find things like the very bizarre but very cool bear cat, aka the binturong, the probably even weirder otter civet, which can close flaps around their nose and their ears to hunt underwater, just like, say, an otter, for example. We're also out there looking for flying squirrels, slow loris, mouse deer. If we get really, really lucky, the dream is to find the clouded leopard, the most arboreal of the big cats and also the smallest. And these predators are incredibly difficult to spot. All of the wildlife here is so enigmatic and so bizarre that we'd be so very, very lucky to find, and hopefully we're able to share some of them at least with you guys here tonight.
Searching for wildlife at night is, unsurprisingly, quite a different experience compared to during the day, and that's where this spotlight comes in handy. Roaming quickly across the forest, we try to cover as much space as possible. Watching, you'd think that it would be almost impossible to spot animals like this. We're looking for eye shine, the reflection of light from an animal's eyes. In theory, by sweeping this quickly, we hope to increase our chances of catching that reflection. And all we need is a moment.
Oh, squirrel! Squirrel, squirrel, squirrel!
This is Thomas's flying squirrel. There's a real lack of information about flying squirrels, but Borneo is the place to find these strange animals, with 14 species being found on the island, more than anywhere else in the world. Thomas's flying squirrel is one of the largest species, and while we don't know much, we do know that the flying squirrels don't really fly. They glide, using skin flaps that connect their front and hind limbs to soar between trees. Some of the giant species, like the Thomases, have been recorded gliding up to 150 metres. Now you can kind of tell when the squirrels are thinking about leaping from a tree, so we were flitting between a couple in one little area, trying to catch that moment. Finally we spotted one, but what happened next took us all by surprise. As the squirrel leapt into his glide, we caught him right in the middle of our spotlight, momentarily blinding him. We could only watch in horror as he crashed into the tree. This was a great reminder of the impact that these bright white lights can have on wildlife, especially on nocturnal animals. This is why, as noted in studies coming out of places like the Night Spotting Project, red lights are actually significantly better for the animal's eyes, and also better for spotting animals. We had several red light filters fitted onto head torches as a part of our night spotting kit, but unfortunately they're not great for filming. It's a real balance. Thankfully, we saw him a little later scurrying up another tree and seemed to be moving well. It seemed like the flying squirrels were everywhere here in Duramakot. The longer the night went on, the more we found, including some species I wasn't able to catch on film. The variety and abundance of flying squirrels here in Duramakot is a great sign, but we were still holding out hope for our clouded leopard. Flying foxes were a surprise find along our journey. The large flying fox is one of the biggest species of bat in the world, with a wingspan of up to 1.5 metres wide. They absolutely love flowers and nectar, but they will also eat fruit. Unlike smaller bats, they can't echolocate, so they make up for it with great eyesight and a strong sense of smell. The much maligned flying fox actually plays an important role in the ecosystem. They are vital seed dispersers and pollinators of the forest trees. They help the forest to regrow. They even help pollinate trees used for commercial purposes, such as durian. They are definitely a misunderstood species. We hit the road again, and the night just kept on throwing up new and exciting animals for us to see. This treetop cutie is the small-toothed or island civet. I've always found it tough to describe what a civet is to those that don't know them. I tend to go for something between a cat and a fox, but then some species, like the small-toothed civet, are almost exclusively arboreal. Civets are highly adaptable though. They have a wide-ranging diet, eating almost anything. This mother was making the most of the kids leaving her alone for a moment to devour some fruit. Due to their adaptability, civets are doing pretty well for themselves. Some species, of course, are less common than others though. I hadn't seen the small-toothed civet at all during my 7 months in Peninsular Malaysia, so I loved getting to follow them here for so long in Duramakot. One of my favourite brief sightings was of the lesser mouse deer, one of the smallest hooved mammals in the world. Watching their tiny little legs scurry across the forest floor along the road in this example was really special. One of the most iconic nocturnal species in Southeast Asia, and also one of the weirdest, is the slow loris. The slow loris have a gland inside their elbow that secretes a clear fluid that, when mixed with the loris's saliva, becomes toxic. This makes the loris the only venomous primate in the world. For years, it was thought that the venom was strong enough to be fatal to humans, but luckily, it's now thought that that's not true. One of the most interesting things about the slow loris, though, is the theory that they've perhaps evolved to mimic some of the most venomous reptiles in the world, the cobras. The markings across their body and on their face, the venom and extra vertebrae that allows them to sway, defensive posturing that makes them resemble the shape of a cobra with its hood flared, and even a hiss. I'd never heard this before, but looking at it, I can definitely see the basis for it. Loris species have been significantly impacted by the wildlife trade, so I just love finding them out in the wild. The forests of Duramakot had plenty for us to find in the way of small mammals, like the slow loris and the squirrels, but that made it easy to forget that there were other, much larger animals that call these rainforests home.
Alright guys, I'm being really quiet because this is incredibly fresh Borneo pygmy elephant poo. We're pretty sure we can hear them just in the forest right there. If we're too loud, these guys can be really aggressive. Why are we being super quiet? Hoping that we get a bit more footage of them, but we're also being super cautious. Now we've seen that their poo all through here, but it's always been days, some are even weeks old. But this is in minutes. So I'm going to get going because I do not want to piss these guys off. They're much, much bigger than me. Fingers crossed we can find them. But otherwise, this is super cool.
Despite all of our best efforts, we just couldn't manage to spot the elephant through the dense foliage. How incredible that such a large animal like the elephant was able to pretty much disappear without a trace. Sunrise over the rainforest is one of my favourite times here. At the moment the dawn chorus is just starting up. There are birds everywhere. We've just been hearing the calls of the rhinoceros hornbills, and down there, right now in fact, that's the helmeted hornbill. That's my favourite call in the rainforest. Better than any of the gibbons, better than any of the other birds. That call is so unique. Those short poop and then the cackling laugh at the end. I just love it. Now those birds are unfortunately becoming rarer and rarer as their casques, or their helmets, are used for what's known as red ivory. And it's actually more valuable in fact than elephant ivory, which means that those birds are being trafficked to extinction. But in places like Duramakot, you can still hear their dawn call. And I tell you what, you wouldn't want to miss it. God, it's special. Sunrise is one of the best times to find life in the forests. To hear animals like the helmeted hornbill, the rhinoceros hornbill, gibbons, orangutans even, as they wake up, need to find food, need to get warm even. As the day goes on, the sun gets higher and that heat comes back. Those animals start to find places to rest in the shade out of that heat. So while it's still nice and cool, as the sun just starts to make its way over the tops of the trees, doesn't get much better than this. The story of the helmeted hornbill is a strong reminder of why areas like Duramakot are so important. Otherwise threatened wildlife seem to be flourishing in this reserve, and its use of reduced impact logging could be a part of that. Standing and watching the sunrise, keeping my eyes peeled, it wasn't long before more evidence of endangered wildlife was found. Alright, this is really cool. Okay, so what we've got here is actually one of the most endangered mammals in Malaysia, potentially, or in Southeast Asia even. This track is from the bunting, or the forest cow. Now, these animals are critically endangered. They're
look pretty much like a normal cow, but a fair bit bigger. And the males, even the females, have got some great big horns. The largest population of them is actually in Australia, after a few were introduced back in the, I think it's the 19th century, and they just ended up running wild. But here, where in their homeland, they're almost extinct. In Peninsular Malaysia, they're fully extinct, but a reintroduction program is trying to get them back into the forests of Malaysia. In Taman Negara, particularly in Sungai Relau, Pahang, the bunting has been reintroduced. There's a group of, I think it's about maybe 10 of them now, and they're trying to get them to encourage them to go back out into the forests, as they're quite an important member of the rainforest ecosystem. Only time will tell if that program will be successful. Here in Borneo, the last population remains, and here in Duramakot is apparently a really good spot to find them. Now, this track probably only maybe 2 or 3 days old at most, and this is really fresh. And if you look around, actually, there's another one here, there's a few more just up there and a few more down here. They've come up, and some of them have come up through here, and then clearly they've come back down there. And that's pretty cool. It's not often you get to find something quite as endangered as this just around the place. And I don't think we're going to find them, but to know that they've been here and that they're in this area, that's really special. Duramakot, man. It's got some incredible stuff. Let's see what else we can find.
Upon finding more of these tracks, it became evident that these footprints were only hours old. We must have just missed the bunting. In other parts of Southeast Asia, the bunting are managing a little bit better than the Bornean subspecies. With less than 500 individuals left, the bunting are thought to be one of the most endangered large mammals in Borneo. What an incredible find! Despite all of our searching, our target species, like the clouded leopard, eluded us. While disappointing, it was hardly surprising. However, finding these rare species wasn't the only aim of this trip. The abundance and variety of life here in Duramakot was staggering.
I know one place.
And there was still one more treat left for us to find. This jumble of leaves and sticks could well be seen as one more reason why reduced impact logging might be the way forward. This is an orangutan nest. High in the treetops, it will be easy to miss, but when you know what you're looking for, they are almost unmistakable. Duramakot Forest Reserve is home to approximately 1,000 orangutans, one of the largest populations left in the world. If these giant, gentle apes can thrive here in the context of reduced impact logging, perhaps there might be some hope after all.
They say that all good things must come to an end, and such is the case for my time here in Borneo. But what an incredible experience it's been. Watching the flying foxes, the flying squirrels, and the hornbills gliding above us. Watching orangutans playing in the treetops, or the proboscis monkeys resting above the river in Kinabatangan. Going out cruising for crocodiles and being mere meters away from a pygmy elephant, but still not being able to see it. The wildlife here is truly out of this world, and I could not be more lucky to be able to experience it in the way that I have. Unfortunately, the forests here in Borneo and around the world are disappearing at a terrifying rate. However, there is still hope, and places like here in Duramakot potentially provide the blueprint for successfully and sustainably managing a forest for conservation and for people. Now if you get the chance to come out here and experience Duramakot and Borneo for yourself, I could not recommend highly enough that you take that opportunity. The wildlife here, the forests here are gorgeous and is unlike anywhere else potentially on the planet. So get out there, get wild, because you never know what you might find. I'm Angus Hamilton, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.